From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Tonight, Lagos churches reopen for Sunday service after almost 5 months of COVID-19 lockdown. Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi inspects schools ahead of reopening for final year students, says he is not fully satisfied with COVID-19 precaution in place. Northeast governors advocate use of heavy artillery by police to complement efforts of the military. And donor nations seek reforms in Lebanon after virtual aid summit on Beirut explosion, plus sports stories. After about 5 months of COVID-19 lockdown, churches in Lagos reopened today to worshippers. At some of the venues visited by our crew, parishioners exhumed a lot of happiness to be back after such a while as they observed clear COVID-19 protocols and guidelines. But several other churches have decided not to reopen. Our correspondent, Olu Phillips, reports.
The rules were made, the rules have been followed. What a reality it is for members of the faith-based community who have to adhere to an all-new way of fellowshipping. The scanty looks, however, are not necessarily a function of poor attendance. You must keep a distance if you opt to have congregational worship.
You are wonderful, you are worthy, oh Lord.
1 hour is the time allotted for any service. Members made the most of it. There's no better time to reinforce the faith of the believer than times as this.
A lot of changes have happened. People can't shake hands, they can't hug and all of that. But we believe that we have to keep on telling them about what they need to do. And the more we tell them, the more they get used to it. It's just a function of time. People will get used to it.
Okay, ma. Nice to see you.
Aside applying prescribed rules for safety reasons, the order of fellowship as known and practiced has been altered, and a consequence for which Pastor Chris Okotie says it is a violation of divine ordinance.
Now, if you stand in the presence of the Lord wearing a mask, it is reminiscent of Moses because he introduced the mask. There are 4 in Scripture. You have 2 in the temple, then the mask of Moses, and then Lot, who is the personification of that mask. So it's sacrilegious. We cannot do it.
Reverend Mercy is, however, optimistic about a better deal soonest.
There's nothing that starts that does not have an end. It started someday, it will end someday. And God is in charge. He's the owner of the whole world. And there's nothing strange that has ever happened that has ever overtaken him because he's God all the time. So one day, sometime, it will stop and we shall come together again to praise our God in fullness.
Quite a number of churches opted out of the reopening permission as seen in their empty car parks and deserted auditoriums. One thing is certain, whether as a mediated means or physical call to worship, the clergy are reportedly unanimous on one conviction. The faith-based community will remain steadfast in service to the Creator. Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
And while churches and schools have already resumed in Lagos, the same is not entirely the situation in Ekiti State, where Governor Kayode Fayemi has been inspecting schools ahead of the resumption of final year secondary school students on Monday. The inspection is Governor Fayemi's first public function after he recovered from COVID-19, and he says he's not fully satisfied with the preparations of some schools. He has asked the State Commissioner for Education to ensure 11th hour fine-tuning to make Monday's resumption tidy, as he promises to also be part of constant monitoring of situation across the schools. The state started the resumption of schools with teachers last week to enhance adequate preparation for the students' resumption.
Each of them sitting on one of these, how many?
I'm still not satisfied, not completely satisfied. Some principals are better prepared than others, which was the whole point of going around today, so that all the schools have the Veronica buckets, they have the thermometers, they have the sanitizers, and they are arranged in such a manner as to allow for social distancing. Some have done it better than others. What would happen is that the Honorable Commissioner for Education and his team will still undertake some activities between now and tomorrow morning, just to be sure that we get it right. Although we have a week before the exam starts, I would much rather this is tidied up before then. So we have a pro forma form that is being handed over to all the school principals so that they precisely let us know who the COVID-19 coordinator is in their school and the arrangements that they've been trained to observe. And, you know, we're also testing some of them randomly just to make sure that we're reasonably safe.
Staying with education, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, is considering a new date for the commencement of the 2020 admissions processes from the earlier announced date of August 22nd. The board says it will be meeting all tertiary institutions tomorrow to brainstorm on the possibility of shifting the commencement of admissions to a date that would better accommodate the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. JAM says it's working to preempt any unpalatable situation which may arise if institutions conduct their admissions without accommodating the vast number of candidates that are about to take their O-level examinations. And this is coming days after the federal government relaxed COVID-19 restrictions for the West African Examinations Council to conduct examinations from August 17th. Away from COVID-19 related stories, the governors of conflict-ravaged northeast states are advocating the use of heavy artillery by the Nigeria police to bridge the manpower deficit in the armed forces. A call is contained in an 11-point communique issued by the Northeast Governors Forum at the end of its second meeting in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital. The communique was read by the forum's newly elected chairman, Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State, who underscored the need to rejig the sub-region's economy.
The forum commends the effort of the federal government of Nigeria in fighting the insurgency. However, the armed forces should intensify effort to secure hard-to-reach areas in the region and ensure safe access to farmlands and other socio-economic activities. The forum called on the federal government of Nigeria to ensure the deployment of state-of-the-art military hardware to the region. The forum recommends that the manpower deficit in the Nigerian armed forces should be bridged by allowing the police to carry state-of-the-art weapons where necessary and be provided with strategic equipment like high-velocity tear gas, trackers, and armored personnel carriers (APC). The forum called on the Federal Ministry of Water Resources to ensure that attention is given to recharging the Lake Chad Forum from national water bodies and strengthen the river basins in the sub-region.
Meanwhile, some residents in communities affected by insurgency in Madagali local government area of Adamawa State are appealing to the federal government to expedite action in rebuilding damaged infrastructure in their area. They believe this will attract development partners and donor agencies to return and continue their projects. They also have a conviction that rebuilding Their community will provide the enabling environment needed to tap into the agricultural and other natural potential in the area.
Normalcy is gradually being restored in Madagali local government, an area heavily affected by activities of Boko Haram in Adamawa State. At the height of insurgency, Madagali was under the control of terrorists who hoisted their flag. Today, the people have returned to their ancestral homes and are going about their farming activities. Commercial activities are also picking up as petty traders display their wares. This year's Eid celebration was observed in an atmosphere of peace. Despite the relative peace being achieved in Madagali, the people decry the refusal of development partners, donor agencies, investors and even contractors to return to the area to execute development projects expected to transform their lives because of perceived fear of insecurity. A peace and unity meeting between residents of Madagali and their Cameroonian counterparts, aimed at improving the security situation in the border area, culminates in a friendly football match. Some stakeholders share their views on the outcome of the meeting.
Planned by the administration to tar all the roads in this town. The plan has gone far. We are just waiting for them to finish with Black and then come here. In fact, they would have started at the same time, but the contractor said no, there is no peace in Madagali. So we wanted them to work in Gulag for a time being, then look at this, assess the security station around, then come down to Madagali to do the job.
The district head of Madagali speaks on the need to improve the security situation in the area, while a federal lawmaker from the community appeals to those who abandoned the area to return.
We are appealing to the federal, state, and then the Northeast Initiative to please provide these things so that our people will come back to renovate our houses, our places of worship, schools, and the rest.
I'm calling on other investors to come to Madagali because Madagali is endowed with natural resources. I'm calling on other indigenous of this place to come back home and continue their normal living. As you have seen, majority of people have resumed their farming activities because we can sleep with all our eyes closed.
This interaction, which is a first of its kind since insurgency began, will not only build mutual trust and promote peaceful coexistence, but will go a long way in building confidence and trust that normalcy in these border communities is being achieved.
As in our attention now to politics, Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki is asking for a level playing field in September for the governorship election, insisting that the opposition has resorted to terror tactics to get victory at all costs. The governor also urges that the opposition has nothing on the ground to convince people for votes and will be pushing for a postponement of the governorship polls. He said this at a forum in Benin City with journalists.
The opposition today understands the difficulties and the uphill task they face, and therefore are not confident enough that if we have a peaceful environment and go for an election today, they don't have the confidence that they will win and succeed because they know where the sympathies of the people are. So their strategy, rather than trying to persuade and win over people, and unfortunately they don't have much records to do so, is to first wage a war of massive and very vicious propaganda. You know, when somebody tells you they have done nothing, right? And you sit in this hall and you look around you and say, wow, if this is not something, then, then what is something? So their first plan is to invest in vicious and vile propaganda. And their next is to
put fear, intimidation, and scare people from coming out to exercise their franchise.
In part two, after the break, time to clear way for traffic in Apapa as Governor Sanwo-Olu inspects parking lots. Stay with us. Welcome back. If it has joined us, you're watching Channels Television live right here in Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Lagos churches reopen for Sunday service after almost 5 months of COVID-19 lockdown. Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi inspects schools ahead of reopening for final year students. Says he's not fully satisfied with COVID-19 precaution in place. Northeast governors advocate use of heavy artillery by police to complement efforts of the military. And donor nations seek reforms in Lebanon after virtual aid summit on Beirut explosion. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. The Lagos State government has asked private property owners who have turned their spaces to holidaying bays to revert to the original purpose of these facilities or have their ownership revoked. The directive was given when the state governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, went on assessment of projects in the Costain, Ijora, Apapa areas of the metropolis, following reports that some private facility owners have turned their parking spaces into holding bays for tankers, which is affecting the plans to ease the traffic flow. Our correspondent, Nyota Igbe, reports.
It's a bright Sunday morning, and Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has decided to see things for himself as far as project execution in some parts of the state is concerned. Costain roundabout to Ijora Bridge, to Costain Bridge and on to Apapa, Mr. Sanwo-Olu took time to examine the work in progress and speak to the workers. When he arrived at Apapa, one thing caught his eye: a container on a truck that appears not to be properly latched. He engages representatives of the Maritime Workers Union, tanker and truck drivers to resolve some of the issues that have remained bottlenecks to the smooth flow of traffic in the area.
From tomorrow now, if Lily Pump is working, you are not meant to be here. You are meant to wait at Lily Pump and wait for your good to go before you come out. Abi, you understand? Once you open it up, you are meant to have not only your PDA, whatever I call it, but your good to go. Your shipper must call you before you get your good to go, before you come.
One of the representatives is happy that the governor is taking action.
It's proactive. For him to calm down, to say, okay, let me go see what is happening. It's proactive. That is exactly what it takes to be a leader.
It was in this area that he ordered the sealing of a private facility following the reports that some owners had turned their properties to container holding bays.
This land was given to them as car park, right? And I don't know what came about you guys. You guys cut it off and turned the other part of it to a container terminal, right? It cannot. I'm going to give 1 week notice. From today, 7 days. They are coming to seal it, but from upper week, not only will we see all of the items there, it will be completely unaccessible.
There are at least 30 parking areas in the Apapa axis to hold trucks and trailers, while the Lagos state government and the federal government work to build the roads in the Apapa axis and beyond in order to ease traffic flow.
They're all concrete roads that are being built. Liverpool has been completed. This is Creek Road, right? This is Creek Road. It's also been completed. But I understand that by October, all of these network of roads will be open up, to traffic, just for them to clean it up.
The tour train moved on to the Mile 2 area where the governor chatted with the contractor building the road and then turned to the crowd gathered to tell them why they should care for the road.
No problem, thank you.
The Lagos state government says trailers and trucks on the roads remain a major cause of concern. But it appears things will ease off soon with a possible return to the call-up system and the opening of the Lilliport terminal that should help ease traffic. Nell Taibi, Channels Television News.
The recent accident in Lagos State where a container fell on a bus, killing 3 people, has many calling for stiffer fines and punishment for owners of heavy-duty vehicles who pose threats on the roads. In this next report, our correspondent, Onyekuru, examines the issues of accidents involving heavy-duty vehicles.
The Apapa Container Terminal, located in Lagos, southwest Nigeria, is regarded as the biggest in West Africa. Hundreds of containers arrive from everywhere and are placed on heavy-duty trucks to be transported to various destinations. Where safety of other road users become a huge concern is the focus of this story. An ideal situation requires every container, before leaving the port, pass through latch verification, which is to ensure they are secure. However, it seems this part of the exercise is ignored by those assigned to it, as hundreds of unfastened containers ply roads, which are in dire need of repairs. This animation shows that even if the roads are yet to be fixed, fastened containers will pose less of a threat. Here's what happens when an unlatched container moves on the same road. Get the scary picture? This spurred the Federal Road Safety Corps, FRSC, in 2015 to launch Operation Scorpion, a crusade to arrest heavy-duty vehicles that pose threats on the roads. Large verification and tire checks were done, and those found wanting were arrested and taken to a mobile court. Interestingly, the stipulated fine for the offense is pegged at 5,000 naira or a 9-month jail term.
We are making an appeal to the Federal Minister of Justice now. We are reviewing the National Road Traffic Regulation to increase the fines. Because 5,000 naira, so you commit this kind of offense, 5,000 naira is too small. So I believe we're going to raise this, and I'm going to propose about 50,000 minimum.
But in September of that same year, just barely 2 months later, this happened in Lagos. A container falls off the Ojuelegba Bridge, crushing a car and its occupants below. The driver of the container fled, and nothing was heard of the issue again. Over time, accidents involving containers have been reported across the country, but nothing has changed with regards to latching or heavier fines and sentences. The latest accident in July of 2020, however, seems to have mustered the voice of the people to cry out. At the Lasamaja axis of Lagos, a container fell on a bus, killing 3 occupants, including 27-year-old Chidima Joku and a colleague, 29-year-old Chima Onyekuru.
Let them investigate and know who the driver, is, and the owner of the vehicle, and why it's not, latched the way it's supposed to be.
Let government intervene and stop further killings. The boy was expecting his call. That day I'm home, or something happened, I'm home now. The call they're getting is that go to the morgue and pick his body.
The World Bank, in a 2014 report on road injuries in sub-Saharan Africa, ranked Nigeria as having the most dangerous road network, with a death rate of 52.4 per 100,000 people, the highest of any country on the continent. An indication that the authorities need not only to change perception, but ultimately save lives, because a victim might just be closer to home than thought. Onyekuru, Channels Television News.
As Nigerian medical officials maintain the front line in the fight against coronavirus, they've also been extending their services to other critical health conditions that need their attention. 52 of them assembled at the Federal Medical Center, KEFI, and separated Conjoined Twins successfully on July 10th. And weeks after attaining the breakthrough, the separated children are fit for discharge, but the medical director, Adamu Yahaya, says the hospital is making sure they can live individually without any post-surgery complications. Here's more from Halima Guillaume.
Born conjoined at the lower chest and abdomen, sharing a common liver, Hassana and Husseina are now successfully separated by a 52-man team of health professionals assembled and majorly funded by the Federal Medical Center, KEFI. There was no need to travel out of the country to attain such feat, which is the first in the hospital and second successful in the North Central region after the National Hospital, Abuja. It was a 9-hour surgery planned since their first week of delivery when they were brought here and executed on July 10th when they were about 15 months old. Governor Abdullahi Sule visits the children and praises the professionalism exhibited by the indigenous team.
All these professional medical personnel have come together to conduct this successfully. And we pray that God will continue to give them the know-how, the knowledge, the experience, to be able to show this kind of level of medical professionalism. So I want to thank them sincerely. I came in to see it for myself, and I'm happy to see the children in very, very high spirit.
The children are certified fit for discharge to begin normal independent lives. But the hospital management will not take chances.
It was done successfully and smoothly. There was no heartaches throughout the surgery, no complication during the surgery, and the children came out successfully. And then today, just like you had seen them earlier, they are doing very well. In fact, fit enough to go home. But we want to make sure everybody is happy, including their parents.
Bubbly kids, a happy mother, and a contented sister extend their appreciation. The separation of Hassan and Husseina from this tertiary health institution in Nasarawa State marks another breakthrough in Nigeria's medical history. For experts, more investments in the health sector and trust from the people will see Nigerian doctors accomplishing more and in turn minimize medical tourism. Halima Gayam, Channels Television News.
Such an uplifting story to hear in this day and age. Well, when the news at 10 returns, Channels Television's data analyst Babajide Gusau will be joining us to discuss military spending in Nigeria. We'll hear the facts, the figures, and the analysis. Join us again. Welcome back. COVID-19 has increased the government's expenditure and investment in the health sector. But is this at the expense of plans for new military assets? Tonight, the search for answers continues, but we'll be finding out if the money that has been spent by the military is producing results, or will results depend on the money spent? Babajide Gusau, data and information consultant, is here to share insights on Nigeria's defense spending. Great to see you.
Good evening, Amara.
Good evening. Every time I see you, I know you're in good health, and I know that you're doing well.
Yes, we're.
Okay.
Tonight we won't be talking about COVID.
Yeah, but even something even more serious, which is security, of course. But of course, a different part of that. There have been several recommendations to the military, to Nigerians, on how to improve the country's security. How much has been spent so far in this fight against insurgency?
There are lots of ways we could look at this, but I'd like to remind you that exactly on this day, it's been 7 decades past 5 years, the United States dropped a bomb on Nagasaki and the Japanese surrendered unconditionally. Tonight, we should drop a bomb on those that spread fake news, those that say that by a magic wand, the change in leadership of the Nigerian military will solve all of Nigeria's problems. Because there are 3 factual ways that we should look at the security situation. The first is we should look at it based on how much do countries who are in wartime, how do they spend? The second will be to look at how Nigeria was spending money on the military. And third is to look at how is Nigeria now spending money. So I'd like us to take a look at that first one. How do countries who are fighting war, how do they spend money? And if we look at the evidence we have today, what is in front of you shows the history of countries that have gone to war and how they have spent money on their military. And you'll notice two major spikes there. The longest spike is the amount of money that was spent during the Second World War. I'm talking about that period between 1939 to 1945. And the summary of what you have in front of you is that in 1945, during the Second World War, the United States spent approximately 40% of their GDP on military spending. The United Kingdom spent about 42% of their expenditure on the military. And indeed, Japan, 99% of their GDP was on military expenditure. So the fact shows that countries who are at war spend a lot of money on military expenditure. That is the fact. Now, the second thing we should look at, Amarachi, is how much was Nigeria spending on its military prior to the war on terrorism? And if we look at that, we notice two things. The evidence today shows that when Nigeria was fighting the civil war between 1967 and 1970, there was a lot of money spent by the government on the military. 5.5% of Nigeria's GDP in 1969 was on military expenditure. Now look at what happened between 1994, when General Sani Abacha was around, between 1994 and 1998. Another spend by the government on military equipment. So we can see between 1994 and 1999, 6.6% to 6.7% of GDP was spent on military expenditure. So we've seen two things. First is we've seen how global countries and other countries spend when they're at war. The second is we've seen how Nigeria used to spend on the military. The third and final thing we should look at is how is Nigeria currently spending on the military?
I was going to ask that.
And if we take a look at our current expenditure on the military, here's what the evidence reveals. Now, presently, we are spending only 0.4%, you heard me right, only 0.4% of Nigeria's GDP goes on military expenditure. Even among low-income countries, Nigeria is lagging. United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, other countries who are currently not even at war are spending significantly more on their military relative to Nigeria. So that sums it all. It's really not just about a magic wand of change of leadership, but the evidence shows that Nigeria is not spending what it should be if it were to be taking this war on terrorism seriously.
So what impacts would that have had on our fight against insurgency and terrorism?
Impact is about results. Let me simplify this for you. The global average on spending by the military is approximately $220 per person. That is the global average. If you pick up the Nigeria's executive budget, it shows 878 billion naira. Approximately, that's the budget of the Ministry of Defense. That's approximately only $12 per person. So in Nigeria, our Ministry of Defense, the military's budget, is approximately $12 per person, relative to the global standard of $220 per person. But because, sometimes this discussion about the military and the budget seems to confuse a lot of people, here's what I've done to simplify and to show how insignificant our investment in the military has been. So, for instance, I'd like us to compare Manchester City versus the amount of money spent by...
Okay, but try not to start another war. They're still reeling from... Some people are still reeling from what happened yesterday, so go easy on them.
Surely, for football fans. But the evidence shows, and if we take a look at what Manchester City spent in 2020 to defend its budget, the amount is spent on the players that it used, just as defenders to defend its trophy in the Premier League. The evidence shows that Manchester City spent more than 400 million euros on the players that it used, on the defenders only that it used to defend its trophy this season. Over 400 million euros, Amarachi, that's more than 180 billion naira. The capital budget of the Nigerian defense, the Ministry of Defense, is just approximately 100 billion naira. In other words, the amount of money that Manchester City spends on defenders that it would use to defend its trophy this season was more than the amount of money that the Nigerian defense has available. So without doubt, the summation of what I'm saying tonight, Amarachi, is that a change in leadership plus a change in strategy, if it is not matched with a change in funding, the results will remain unchanged.
So we need to improve spending. We need to improve expenditure.
We need to improve expenditure, and we should also realize that there's a lot of fake news going on about a silver lining to solve Nigeria's security challenges. The evidence we have and that we've shown shows that compared to what is happening globally, Nigeria is spending and investing significantly lower in its military, even compared to how much it spent during the Civil War. Civil War, as I repeat, Nigeria spent 5.5% of its GDP on the military expenditure. Right now, we're spending less than 1% on our military. And yes, that's what the government needs to look at.
Okay, just waiting for your final word. You always have, the food for thought at the end of your conversation.
So it's the equation. And the equation, again, the equation for tonight is a change in leadership plus a change in strategy. If it is not matched with a change in funding, the results will remain unchanged.
Of course. And your grandfather said nothing about this.
No.
Thanks again, Babajide. It was a pleasure having you here on the News at 10. Now, while northern states continue to battle insecurity, another threat looms as houses in Hayin Buba, a community in Gusau, the Zamfara state capital, has been submerged by flood due to heavy rainfall. According to the special advisor to the governor on humanitarian and disaster management, Mrs. Faika Ahmed, over 100 houses were affected by the flood.
Residents of Gusau, the capital of Zamfara state, are counting their losses after a heavy rainfall resulted in flood that destroyed their property. Elisha Simon is one of the victims. He narrates his experience.
Yesterday night, we experienced flood that came in as a result of the water breakout inside, and it affected some of our food items. And also, he damaged some of the books and other property. Even right away outside, we are working on our sockaway outside because as a result of the breakout of the floods, we are experiencing different things, and sometimes the issue of pneumonia because of the issue of the cool of the place and other these things.
Gusau is among the 7 local government areas in the state predicted to experience flood by the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. The state government insists that the people were given early warning to evacuate flood-prone areas.
We have done a general sensitization program and we are on it, and it will continue repeatedly so that our people will understand the danger of having houses on sewage and waterways, and they will also understand that it's better to be safe than to be sorry. We will do our best, and inshallah we will provide, as I have said, to the best of our ability.
Fortunately, no death has been recorded in the flood, while the list of those displaced by the flood is being collated for distribution of relief materials.
And now to the arts. The Lagos Art Festival is a jamboree of lovers of the lens who come together every year to share their creativity. Art Review tonight takes a look at the world as photographers see it.
It's a travel document that identifies an individual and with proper authorization, allows people from one country to another. That's what artists are exploring in the 10th edition of the Lagos Photo Festival.
This year the theme of the edition is passports. So you will see a lot of works that relate to the theme of cultural identity and to the theme of the possibility of freely travel around the world and move, and this idea of borders, of nations.
The idea is to unite global photographers by picking a topic every year, which they try to do justice to by clicking to issues that address that subject.
I think the theme is really strong and relevant to the occasion, to the time that we are in right now, because we begin to interrogate the African identity, we begin to interrogate the idea of xenophobia, what it is to be a Nigerian or a Kenyan or a South African or even a European. I think the whole world is in a flux right now, and I think the theme really allows us to engage with some of these problematics. So I think it's a highlight too. The intellectual aspect of it is really quite interesting.
These creatives attempt to unravel the essence of having a passport and why it has been passed as a signature document for travel.
The theme passports resonates with a lot of the current geopolitical situation and how countries or nation states are bound and citizens are either given access or denied access to certain spaces, and that's what the passport really typifies or really exemplify or really harbor. And so the ideas of access and denial is some of the things that embodies the theme of the photo festival.
The Lagos Photo Festival is one of the first international photography exhibitions in the country, which began in 2010.
Still ahead on the news at 10, donor nations seek reforms in Lebanon after virtual aid summit on Beirut's explosion. Stay with us.
The Channels 24 app means you'll always be in touch with the news. Get the latest local and international stories on the go. And there's our social media platforms for news from around the world. Watch the news live and play videos that matter to you. You can also check the Eyewitness section to report events around you. Just click on the Eyewitness icon and follow the instructions to upload your content. Channels 24 app, the news at your fingertips.
More than 100,000 people have died from the coronavirus in Brazil, making it the country with the world's second highest death toll. The virus killed 50,000 people in 3 months. The number doubled in just 50 days, and there have been more than 3 million confirmed cases so far. Though the pandemic is yet to peak, shops and restaurants have already been reopened. Here's a global update. A memorial on Rio de Janeiro's Copacabana beach to mark 100,000 COVID-19 deaths in Brazil became tense on Saturday with arguments and accusations of fake news. Brazilian non-governmental organization Rio do Paz organized the memorial, which consisted of 100 crosses placed in the iconic sands of Copacabana and the release of 1,000 red biodegradable balloons. Meanwhile, Porto Alegre's São Lucas Hospital is administering vaccines and monitoring 852 volunteer healthcare workers as part of its participation along with 11 other centers across the country in the research. North Korea's ruling party has delivered special aid packages of food and medical equipment to residents of Kaesong near the border with the south after imposing a lockdown amid coronavirus concerns. Leader Kim Jong-un had declared an emergency after a person who had defected to South Korea returned to Kaesong across the highly fortified border last month. Saudi Arabia is cooperating with Chinese pharmaceutical companies on the third phase of clinical trials of a COVID-19 vaccine. According to the Saudi Ministry of Health, the cooperation with China, in which the vaccine development is based on the agreement between the two countries against the COVID-19 pandemic and the vaccine under trial, has been tested in multiple medical institutions of different countries and proven effective and safe in the first and second phases of trials. Australia's most populous state, Victoria, on Sunday reported its deadliest day of the COVID-19 outbreak, with 17 people dying, although new infections showed signs of easing. Victoria, at the centre of a second wave of infections in Australia, reported 394 cases of the novel coronavirus in the past 24 hours, compared with a daily average of 400 to 500 over the past week. The new deaths bring the state's total to 210. Meanwhile, New Zealand on Sunday marked 100 days without a domestic transmission of the coronavirus, but warned against complacency for fear of a resurgence. New Zealand's successful fight against COVID-19 has made the Pacific island nation of 5 billion people one of the safest places in the world right now. Life has returned to normal, but authorities are concerned that people are now refusing testing, not using the government contact tracing apps, and even ignoring basic hygiene rules. Finally, the United States has reported nearly 5 million cases of COVID-19, meaning that 1 out of every 66 U.S. citizens has been infected with the coronavirus. Fatalities nationwide reached 162,381 as of Saturday, a daily hike of more than 1,500 cases. In the meantime, leaders attending a virtual donor summit following the explosion in Lebanon on Tuesday last week have promised the country aid, but want to see reforms being made. In a statement, the 15 government leaders at the summit said they were ready to support Lebanon's economic recovery, but stressed the need for timely measures. Officials estimate the explosion caused up to $15 billion of damage, left 158 people dead, 6,000 more injured, and about 300,000 people homeless. The blast at a warehouse holding over 2,000 tons of ammonium nitrate has focused local outrage on perceived government corruption and incompetence. The Afghan government has released 400 hardcore Taliban prisoners, paving the way for the beginning of peace talks aimed at ending more than 19 years of war. Under election year pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump for a deal allowing him to bring home American troops, the war-torn country's Grand Assembly on Sunday approved the release, a controversial condition raised by the Taliban militants to join peace talks. With the release, the Afghan government will be fulfilling its pledge to release 5,000 Taliban prisoners. Talks between the warring Taliban and government will begin in Doha this week, as Afghan President Ashraf Ghani appeals to the hardline Islamist group to pledge to a complete ceasefire ahead of talks. In sports news, Super Eagles forward Paul Onyekuru and Super Eagles invitee Cyril Dessers have led Belgium club side Genk to a 2-1 away win against Zulte Waregem in the opening game of the 2020-2021 season earlier this evening. The host opened scoring in the 41st minute of the first half. Onyekuru got the equaliser in the 73rd minute. Dessers then sealed the win on the 80th minute from the penalty spot. With the victory, Genk are top of the league table after opening round of matches. Onyekuru has made 6 appearances for Nigeria, following his first call-up in March 2019, while Belgium-born Dessus was handed his first call-up for Nigeria in March for the African Cup of Nations qualifying fixtures against Sierra Leone, and that game has been on hold owing to COVID-19 sports disruption. Brazilian midfielder Willian has confirmed he will leave Chelsea after 7 wonderful years at Stamford Bridge. The 32-year-old, linked with a move across town to Arsenal, posted a farewell letter to club's fans on Twitter earlier today. Willian began his career with Corinthians in Sao Paulo, joined Chelsea in 2013 and made over 300 appearances for the club, winning 2 Premier League titles. He was out of contract this summer and had failed to agree a new long-term deal with the club. Red Bull's Max Verstappen has taken a sensational surprise victory at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix in Silverstone to bring Mercedes' domination to an end. Verstappen shocked Mercedes to end the world champions winning run in the 2020 season in an intense and thrilling race as Lewis Hamilton snatched second from Valtteri Bottas in the closing laps. Verstappen now moves ahead of Bottas in the Drivers' Championship as Hamilton nearest challenger after 5 rounds.
Yep. So, yeah, we're definitely going to celebrate this one. Great effort, guys. Wasn't our day, but yeah, let's have a look into that.
Yeah, we had a lot of pace in the car. I didn't really have a lot of tire issues at all. And yeah, we just kept pushing, and yeah, an incredible result, of course, to win here. And yeah, we just had a great day. I think everything worked out well. We had the right strategy. Everything was running smooth. So yeah, of course, incredibly happy to win.
Congratulations to the Red Bull team and to Max. You look at their tires; they don't have the problems obviously we had today. So yeah, definitely unexpected to have the blistering as hardcore as we experienced it. But I'm really grateful to have progressed and managed to just get my way through the race.
Well done to Max Verstappen, well done too to Team Aston Martin. Red Bull Racing represented by their race, the Champagne!
In tennis, Sloane Stephens is worried for people's safety at the US Open if everybody does not respect the biosecure bubble and COVID-19 rules. The US Open organizers are creating a bubble in New York to hold the tournament from August 31st without spectators, but Stephen doubts whether every player would be responsible throughout the tournament.
Being in this bubble, we're going to this bubble, it's kind of just like we'll just have to see. I'm not sure what will happen. I'm not sure if people will take it seriously. But we just have to wait and see. And I would hate for it to be a situation where someone actually gets sick or gets the virus or something terrible happens. But that is the reality of people not taking responsibility and doing what's best for others surrounding them and their coworkers and fellow players or whatever.
And the main news again. Most churches in Lagos reopened today for Sunday service after almost 5 months of COVID-19 lockdown. In most of the churches visited by our correspondent, COVID-19 guidelines and protocols were strictly adhered to. Also today, the Northeast governors advocated the use of heavy artillery by the police to complement the efforts of the military in the fight against bandits and insurgents. And donor nations today called for reforms in Lebanon after a virtual aid summit on rebuilding Beirut after the devastating explosion on Tuesday last week. That is the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Good night. Stay safe.